everybody. Today, I'll be talking about the extra mile that we as developers have to take to become awesome. So, ask yourself the following questions. Do you think you're an above average developer? And do you think your code is clean and well structured? And are you a person that constantly is improving his professional skills? So probably most of you have answered yes to this question. And if you did, I congratulate you. You're a good developer, so give yourself a self-five. Or somebody else give a high five, that's fine. But here's the thing. If you look around you, most of the developers are already doing this. So how do you become an amazing developer? How do you become a developer that is hard to replace? One that any company would love to have in their staff. And one that stands out in the crowd. And of course, there's no one answer to this question, but I will give you my secret sauce. So I present you client-driven development, and I have totally made it up. So what is CDD? CDD is an addition of two processes that come around your regular development process. So let's say this is what you usually do, and you add one more process, which is idea validation, that comes before development, and you add another process that comes up to development, which is called implementation validation, and it's streamlined like this. So let's give you a quick demo of what I mean by this. Let me get out of it. Okay. So I've put everything, these two processes into a flowchart because we as developers find it more easier to digest. So let's start with idea validation. By idea, I mean, usually it's whatever the client comes to you with, or it might be a task, it might be a new feature, it might be a bug fix. So we call it an idea. So first thing you have to ask yourself when you start with that is the idea horrible? Because sometimes the clients come to you with a task that is just idiotic. Sorry, excuse me, if there are any clients in the room, I'm sorry, but sometimes they just don't know what they're doing. So you have to ask yourself that question. So if it's a horrible idea, please go ahead and tell that to the client, because most people just go ahead and they do what they're told, and they don't actually inform the client about it. So if the client still doesn't want to do it, then you're awesome. Go drink some beer. You've done your job. If he still wants to do it, ask yourself if you can come up with an alternative solution to that idea. If you can, then show it to the client. If he agrees with it, then go ahead and implement your idea. If he doesn't agree, you still have to do your job and implement his idea. So let's go back. Let's assume that the idea is not that horrible. The question that you still have to ask yourself is it solving the core problem? Because he's coming to you with a task, and often they want to achieve something, and it won't really be achieved by what they're proposing. So ask yourself that. If it's not solving the core problem, you go ahead and implement it. If it doesn't, then ask yourself if you can come up with an alternative solution. Once you do, show it to the client. And if he doesn't like it, go and do another alternative solution. And hopefully you don't get into a recursive here. But still, let's assume that at some point he says, fine, your alternative is good. Then he says yes, and you go ahead and you implement your idea. So it's a pretty simple process. Let's move on to development. So let's say this is development process that you're usually doing. So let's say you're doing that. You finalize that, you finish your task. The question that I urge you to ask yourself is, did you cover all possible scenarios? Because very often we're giving a task, and let's say, let's say the client asks you to implement some kind of pull the context from the user's database, I don't know. And they don't think about the cases where it fails, or where the server doesn't respond, or where something like that happens. And it's really, I urge you that for this to be your responsibility, for you to think of all of those possible scenarios that the client doesn't think about. If the idea doesn't cover all the scenarios, please go back and cover them. Next question you ask yourself is, are you just being a lazy bastard and not covering all scenarios? If you are, please go back and develop it. If you aren't, and you've covered all your cases, I urge you to put yourself in the user's shoes. And if it's a user-facing feature, then ask yourself if you would be happy with what you've just implemented. If you're not, then of course go back to development, or you can go back to idea validation from you to talk to the client about it, and come back to development later. So if you are happy with your idea implementation, then sure, go ahead and push it. Now, let's go back to the slides. Shit. Okay. Then we're delayed. Yeah, let's move on. So let's see some examples of how we would use this. Example number one. Let's say the client comes to you and he says, you have to fix a bug. The problem that you noticed is fixing the bug will be a patch on top of multiple other patches, and this whole thing just will be even more of a mess than it is right now. So you come to the conclusion that it should be refactored. That would be a better approach. So what do you do at this point? First thing you have to do is come up with the time estimate to do the refactoring versus doing the patching. Of course, it's going to be longer, but you still have to give it, an estimate to the client. Then come up with a list of pros of refactoring versus patching it up again. Because if you're coming with an alternative solution, you have to come up with arguments on why you should do this and not that. If you're not sure, you need more expertise, don't shy away from asking your colleagues or superiors to give you more detail or more information on this. And finally, of course, present it to the client. So what will this, and if the client approves it, make it happen and make it good. So what do you achieve by going by this route? So first of all, you show that you have analytical thinking. You can look at a task and think, is this a good approach of doing it, or maybe there's another way. You show that you are not a robot, that you're not just following instructions, whatever you're being told. I know we like being robots, but that's not really the best way of doing it. You showed that you can come up with rational solutions to everyday problems. And the thing is that even if you don't get approved to do the refactoring in this case, you still win. You still get all of these wins from top, from the points above. Okay, let's see another example. You are asked to implement a new feature, and the problem is that either the concept of it sucks, or there's a better way of doing it, or there's a way to enhance it. So what do you have to do? Of course, you have to express your idea to the client. And what should you do specifically? So first of all, gather up your thoughts and come up with clear and concise alternatives to the idea of this feature. Again, consult with your colleagues. Maybe you haven't seen something. Maybe his idea is not that bad and what you're proposing is worse. Who knows? So consult with your colleagues. And when you're ready, pitch to the client. So what do you achieve for this? First of all, you showed that your idea might be valuable. You also might get the chance to demonstrate that you can actually execute on the ideas, not just come up with them. And also you train your brain to actually express the ideas clearly and not just keep them to yourself. And if you get to implement the ideas that you proposed, it's a pretty fun thing. I think it's one of the coolest things in development when you work on your own ideas. Let's take another example, which we encounter pretty often, is the client comes with some revolution in UI or a cool new feature, and it's just a bad idea from top to bottom. So the solution, of course, is to convince the client that it's bad, not just do it because he told you so. What should you do exactly? So come up with a list of ideas of why it's bad, and don't be aggressive. In Moldova, we have a problem of people being pretty angry. So just try to put it up politely and to explain to him why it's wrong. Second important thing is to come up with alternatives, because the client didn't propose this out of his head. He wants to solve some kind of issue. So if you come up with an alternative, it's much more likely that he's going to accept your proposal than reject it. And even if the client fails to budge on this, you still have to implement it. It's your job. What do you achieve by doing this? So first of all, you learn to be Braveheart. You learn to be this guy. Because you stand for your ideas, you stand for what you believe in, so it's a pretty cool thing. You learn how to tell the client that he's wrong from time to time, and doing this in a polite way. And if you manage to convince the client to sway from the path of evil, that's a pretty cool win, I think, in your life. So you can give yourself an self-eye if you do that. All right. So what can you achieve by practicing CDD? First of all, you build your trust to the client. From time to time, the more times you are right and your advice was correct or was useful or meaningful, client will trust you more and more, which leads to the second point, that the more he trusts you, the more it means that you're going to be orchestrating this project, because he'll trust you with your ideas, he'll trust you with your decisions, and you'll be able to sway where the project goes. And it will allow, in case of agency work, it allows for tasks to go just in one direction and not turn back all the time because something was not done, some scenario was not covered, and the task just goes back and forth through the board. So this will go mostly in one direction. For freelancers, this means that you are going to retain clients, because since they trust you with your ideas, they're going to come to you with more work, and they're probably going to give you more, recommend you to other people. For agency people like ourselves in UPESO, a happy client means a happy boss, and a happy boss means money for you, most likely, some bonuses or salary raise. So it's always a good idea to do that. And it also allows you to get rid of the victim mentality, because you always think like, oh, what can I do? I had so many cases with developers doing horrible stuff, and I said, why are you doing this? And he said, well, I don't know, I just didn't tell the client, but you could. So there was a possible solutions here. And some piece of advice that I'd like to leave you with is, first off, speak up. You might have a very good idea, but because we're mostly, like developers are mostly an introverted crowd, we don't really like to speak up, so but try and do that more often. You're going to get used to it. You might have a very good idea, but nobody will know about it if you keep silent. Get out of your comfort zone. A lot of the stuff that I told you don't really come into your responsibilities when you get hired. But if you still do this, the rewards of going out of this comfort zone might be pretty great. And give a shit. Give a shit about your project, because yeah, otherwise, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, if you're not liking what you're doing, maybe you should change your job. So give a shit about your projects. You put some soul into it. And yeah, if you got some questions or you want to talk to me, you can find me there. Some resources with the diagrams, you can find them by the QR code. That's it.